teachers of Reddit. What was the most obvious teacher crush someone had on you? I had a student who had a rough life. Mom pretty much abandoned him, and grandma was raising him by pawning him off to family on the weekends. I knew he was going to have a rough life if someone didn't step in and let him know he mattered. He asked me one day how I would know if someone loved me. I jokingly replied that person would bring me coffee in the morning. A few days later he came into the gym with a huge smile and a cup of gas station coffee. He walked right up and handed it to me along with a bag of creamers and sugars. He said he didn't know how I liked my coffee, so he grabbed one of each. He saved his allowance and asked his grandma to leave for school early so he could stop by the gas station. The next year he brought me a coffee mug so I could remember him when I drank my morning coffee. That kid will always have my heart. That is so sweet. When I was playing Hamlet in the school play, and the girl playing Ophelia got stage fright at the last minute, so the drama teacher had to costume up and sub in for her, on her knees in a low-cut bodice, hanging onto my leg, and screaming, "Oh, help him, you sweet heavens." I got a boner in front of 500 people. Not a teacher, but this one girl had such a blatantly huge crush on my film studies teacher when we were 15 over 16. She herself was mixed race and would ask the poor guy if he preferred white chocolate, dark chocolate or caramel_winky face. Safe to say that was awkward for everyone present in the room. In the days of MSN, I got a chat invite from someone who had the same last name as me. I assumed it was a relation, but they didn't say anything, and so I left for a bit to eat. I came back and saw a couple more people had been added to the chat and saw they'd been talking about me. I realized they were students because they referred to me as Miss. They were teasing one of the others for his crush on me, and he was defending my massive ass as hot. I taught pre-K, and one student always wanted to hear around me and would pretend to slip up and call me mom. He saw my phone had a screensaver of me and my at the time boyfriend, and he got all mad and said I should break up with him. Lol. Kids are adorable. I doubt he'll remember me in a few years. Working as a substitute teacher, I had a 6th grader hand in a poem that went, "Roses are red, violets are blue, I'm single, how about you?" Apostrophe. She also worked her phone number into another poem she handed in. I had a crush on my teacher in high school. After I graduated, I asked him out to lunch with my best friend and me. He agreed. We met up a few days later, and he walked in with his husband. That was a rough day for me. Back when I was teaching preschool, 3-year-olds don't do subtle. He always wanted to hold my hand when we went on walks, to sit next to me at circle time, and just to look at me with puppy eyes. It was adorable, but at the same time it was a relief when he grew out of it. Years later, I was teaching an all-boy class at a vocational high school and was lucky enough to get a bright new teacher on a Comenius exchange to co-teach the class with me. She was also quite attractive and the boys reacted. Since it was an English language class, I got a kick out of doing my best Mary Poppins impression. "Close your mouth, please. We are not a codfish." Apostrophe. I was a special needs teacher. There was zero subtlety. One student would constantly try to lift up my skirt. I had a kid ask me to marry him the other day. Then he proceeded to say I would be way too old for him by the time he was old enough to get married. I teach at a university and students ask me out. I had a student once ask me out in front of the class while I was teaching, but I think it was more a power move than anything else. Edit. Bonus story. I teach a sexuality class and a student brought up negging. I asked the class for a definition, and one dude goes, "You're pretty for a sociologist." The entire class was horrified that he had negged me. During college I was teaching a lesson about money and having a job to kindergarteners and opened with, "So how do you guys think I got the money to buy candy?" Apostrophe. Small blunt child, "Because you're cute." Apostrophe. Supervising teacher in the back of the room just starts laughing. Lol. I have a student this year who tells me how pretty my hair is every single day. He's 7. I'm not a teacher, But I do have a story of when I was a HS student. It was my senior year, and I had a crush on this young history teacher. He would come on Model UN trips with us as a chaperone, so he knew who I was. It was my birthday, and he heard from a different teacher across the hall. He said happy birthday to me, and my response was thanks. I'm 18. I blurted it out very quickly, and realized literally the second it left my mouth how inappropriate it was. His response: well, are you registered to vote? Kids and teenagers always announce their age on their birthdays. The teacher may not have noticed what you think they noticed. When I find out someone is 18, I always encourage them to register and vote, saying, otherwise, all the taxes you pay will go to old people stuff. Apostrophe. I teach at a local university, and I've had a few, including one who used to sketch me during class, one who tried to put his arm around me, etc. The most obvious and persistent was a student who used to follow me after class every day, show up at my office just to talk, and spent all of his time attempting to look down my shirt. He ended up dropping out of college halfway through the semester. Have sketched teachers. Definitely did not have a crush on them though. Have sketched tutors. We were at art college though. A lecturer tried courting a student though. There was like a 6-year age gap, so not creepy, just power dynamic, unprofessional. My first year teaching high school, the A/V department made an end of the year tape for the students every year as a keepsake. That year they allowed a senior to profess her love to me on the tape. I didn't know she had done this, and they had allowed it until it played over their A/V system to the whole school. Needless to say, I was pissed. But I couldn't make too much of a stink, because I didn't want a lot of attention drawn to it, and they weren't going to take it out. Fuckers. Wow, that's ducking and professional by them. Was it a more serious tape, or was it delivered in a joking way? I found it very unprofessional. To be honest, I don't remember if she was half joking or not, because I could only focus on the possible ramifications to focus on how she said it. The tape wasn't super serious, but it was something these kids were to keep as a memento, so I'd expect it to be mostly non-fiction. I had a student ask me if I was married. Yes. This was followed by, but are you happily married? I started teaching way too young. Edit. Appreciate the silver and gold. I'm glad to have amused you all with my awkward moment. I taught grade 7 and one kid in particular took a liking to me. It wasn't a crush per se. It came across more as an elementary school fascination with the teacher. He would raise his hand constantly during class to answer questions. And when students were doing work, he would raise his hand constantly to ask me random questions about my life. He had a few favorite questions like what song is stuck in your head right now? Or what's your fiance's name? One time he very excitedly told me he had seen me at Costco, and I hadn't been to Costco that week. So he clearly was seeing me in places I wasn't. I taught preschool, and the owner's grandson would tell everyone we were going to get married once he was done with first grade. He even gave me mittens with hearts on them, because hearts are for love. He's in middle school now, and doesn't remember me. I teach preschool too. It was my last day at a school, because I was moving. One of the 4-year-olds announced to everyone that he knew where I was moving. When asked, he explained that Miss Pumpkin Pasties was moving in with him as we were getting married. News to me. When I left my computer unlocked and a student put naked pictures of herself as my wallpaper and a post-it with her number. Bit of a different one this. Parents' evening. Single mum comes in to talk about her son. Her youngest daughter, probably about 4, runs in, jumps on my knee and exclaims, "My mummy says you're going to be our new daddy." Longest parents' evening of my life. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in college we had a pretty sexy biology professor. Not only was he physically attractive, but he seemed to be a pretty cool person. Most of the women in his classes were pretty smitten, and I won't pretend like I wasn't one of them. However, I went back to college after a few years off, so I was 26 in rooms of 18 to 21-year-olds. 5 years may not seem like a huge difference, but holy shit, it was. His office was connected to the lab, and one day while myself and some other students were doing work in the lab, this one girl was quite loudly proclaiming the things she would do to him. including saying things like I don't care if he's married with kids. He was sitting in his office at the time, and I said you need to keep your ovaries in check. He can definitely hear you right now. She said she didn't care, and she hoped it tempted him. It made me uncomfortable for him. I can't imagine how he must felt. He usually came out of his office to chat with us or help us, but not that day. A student who had a crush on me wrote a straightforward proposition and asked another teacher to deliver it to me. This teacher was a mentor of sorts to the student, so you'd think he'd do something wiser and more responsible than what he actually did, which was deliver the note and threaten me with some form of unspecified violence if I told anyone. So I informed the principal, and both the student and teacher were transferred to other schools. Is there any more context to the threats of violence if you told anyone? Like, what was the goal there? Did he think he was protecting the student from something? What? I can totally see the other teacher giving you the note in the spirit of I just thought you should know. But what he did makes no sense to me. He was not the sharpest person on our staff. He said if you tell anyone, and mimed a knife across the throat. It struck me as idle and blustery, but it still counts as a threat. I read it as an effort to protect his position at the school. When the principal transferred him, the other teacher swore up and down he was unaware of the contents of the note. That apparently was enough to save his position in the district, but not enough to save him from being transferred. I'd believe him if he told me that he didn't read the note, but I wouldn't believe him if he told me that he couldn't guess the gist of the note. And I guess the principal didn't believe that either. Not a teacher, but used to be a Cub Scout guide. One of our boys, Tenyo, had a crush on my adjutant, 16-year girl. He swore she will be his girlfriend one day, and was strangely serious about it. We laughed it off, and forgot about it. Years went by. The boy became a man, joined the army, came back, went to medical university, got buff and handsome, and reached out to his old crush on Facebook. They got married last May, and have a baby girl. A girl in my graduating class ended up marrying a teacher/baseball coach who taught at my school. Pretty sure they are still together with child, Ren. They were engaged very shortly after graduation. Pretty sure all her friends knew. If social media had been a thing back then it would have been outed. Not a teacher, a student. Back in middle school, 16 years ago, I had a crush on a teacher of mine, although I wasn't aware of the severity of it until it was too late. Around Halloween time we were supposed to write a poem about a teacher of ours. I, of course, procrastinated until the night before and then realized that I lost the sheet with the contents of what the poem is supposed to be. All I knew was that it had to be about a teacher. So I chose my crush unbeknownst to me. The next day I show up to class and try and turn in my paper, where I was informed by my teacher crush that we were going to be reading our poems in front of 2 classes, separated by a sliding wall half the time. As other students read this I quickly realized these poems were supposed to be Halloween related. I panicked because mine didn't fit the criteria and had nothing to do with Halloween. It wasn't until I was reading mine aloud that I felt the sudden rushing aha moment of what I had just confessed to the entire 2 classes. Both teachers from either side of the wall and the entire student body watched in stupefied horror as I read it aloud, voice and hands shaking. Too late to turn back. It went like this to start. Mr. Hopper. Mr. Hopper. I have a dog named Copper. Mr. Hopper. Mr. Hopper, you make my eyes popper. I don't remember the rest. When I finally looked at Mr. Hopper, his entire face and neck was red with embarrassment. We never spoke of it ever, and I avoided him like the plague. I'm sure it was the same around. Not me, but when I was in school a teacher found another student's very graphic erotic fanfiction about him. Ended up having a conference with her parents, counselor, and principal. Girl got transferred to a different classroom, but tried to shoot up the school with what she thought was her brother's secret gun. It was a toy he modified to look real. Hadn't seen or heard about her since, but before I graduated the school made it a rule that staff were not to be depicted in any creative work, and if any such work was found the owner was looking at suspension. My older brother's friend proposed to our 60+ teacher every day. She always laughed about it. Cue the entire football team picking up on this and proposing to her before every game. For about 3 years. Q. Though the team may have queued up on Q. Starting teaching high school English at 21 in the early 90s. Very religious. Student wrote me an anonymous letter explaining that she believed that God had put her in my class because we were meant to be together. Figured it out by handwriting. Reported it. It was last days of the school year before she graduated. So I don't think I ever had to deal with her being in my class again because of finals or something. I swear the first year I was teaching I passed 2 students in the hall and the one said, "That's the new teacher." And his friend said, "Yeah. He's so hot." Edit. For anyone confused. Student 1 was a guy. And the student who said I was hot was a girl. I'm a guy. Not a teacher, but I had a crush on a lunch lady while I was in the 1st grade and I would always say, "Hey, good looking. What you got cooking?" She knew what was up. "Did you get extra slop in the chow line?" My husband had a male student follow him into the bathroom and tried to catch him at the urinal way too many times. Deleted. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.